Oh, thank you. Okay, great. The audio is working. So I am so thrilled and honored to be doing this, and it's just wonderful to be back here in Denver. And I wanted to say at the outset that I got an opportunity to spend some time walking around the campus, and as Christine said, I was here in the early 80s, and the transformation of this school from when I was here is just breathtaking. And I'd like to give a warm round of applause to all the people here who work for the school and really have brought this all to bear. It really is amazing. And I also am so thrilled to have my old roommate from college, Stuart Zoll, here, who I haven't seen in decades. And what's great about it, Stuart and I think, were the two poorest students at DU, and we somehow found each other. And Stuart was the only person I know who actually had to send money home while he was at school. So I work in television. I did a brief stint as a lawyer, and I worked as a lawyer for about 5 years. I hit rock bottom. I was a bankruptcy lawyer. And then through a miracle, I got lifted out of that, and I went to work for a cable company. And since then, I've done a number of things in the cable world. I worked for a couple of cable companies. I was part of the startup group for a sports network called the Yes Network, which broadcast all the Yankees games in New York. I then worked for Comcast in a content acquisition around the programming group for Comcast for about 8 or 9 years. And then when Comcast bought NBC, I went to work for NBC. So I've been working in the television business for about 20 years or so. And what I wanted to kind of have some fun with this. And so what I thought I would talk about is really what's going on in my business, what's going on in television, and what is going to happen in the future. Because right now, most people wouldn't know this, but right now, the television business and the video business is at an inflection point. And there are 3 technologies that are going to come together and are coming together right now, which are going to fundamentally change the television experience and really fundamentally change the television business worldwide. And most of that technology nobody is really focused on right now, but it is right there and it's coming. And so I thought I would start in discussing that by rewinding a little bit and going back to 1980, which is when I started at DU. And that also, ironically, was a great inflection point. And in that case, it was digital television, digital computers. So I actually found, I don't know if people can see this. This is an Osborne computer that I found on eBay. And when I was a student at DU, this is what I dearly wanted to have. Of course, that was impossible because it cost essentially a quarter's tuition to buy this. But this technology at the time was absolutely groundbreaking because this was a personal digital computer. Nothing like it had been made before. It wasn't even really the subject of science fiction. But here you had something that actually went out of the age of punch cards and into something that you could actually carry around. It weighed a wonderful 26 pounds. Cost $1,800, 64K of RAM. I don't know if you can see it. This little square right here is a screen, 5¼ inches, monochrome screen. But this, of course, where it all started. And what is amazing, if you look at a cell phone, this iPhone right here, has literally 1 million times the computing power and the memory that this device had in it. And really, you're only talking about 30 years that separated these two devices. So when you go back and you look at what was happening in the TV business at the time that this thing came out, and nobody was going to think that this was going to have any effect on the TV business. So what was going on in the TV business right there? Well, this thing, VHS, that had just launched. That was the hot tech in 1980. If you wanted to record shows and skip commercials, this was your baby. This is what the TV looked like. That's probably the largest screen that you could get, a whopping 25 inches, weighed probably about 600 pounds. MTV had just launched. There's 3 cable networks and probably about 9 or 10, 3 broadcast networks, maybe 9 or 10 cable networks. That was your cable box. So that's how you actually changed channels if you were lucky enough to have cable TV in 1980. This was your guide. This was your interactive program guide right there. I wonder if I'm going to go back. I don't know if anybody can even name who all these people are. Actually, Chips, Dukes of Hazzard, and I don't know where the third guy on the right is. These were the top shows. Dallas, Love Boat, Dukes of Hazzard, Fantasy Island, Three's Company. This is supposed to be video, but we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. So TV's really come a long way. Now, as I thought, here's an old Apple. So who would have thought in 1980 that, frankly, in our lifetime, that these items were going to come together and change television? And of course they have. Now television is a computer is a television. There's almost no distinction between the two. And now video is being displayed on a number of different devices. You can get it on your telephone, you can get it on your iPad, your laptop, you can get it in your car, you can get it on a number of other devices. Now, if you kind of step back and look at what's happened since 1980 with this major inflection point of digital technology, and then the follow-on technology of the internet, which came on about 15 or so years later. If you look at what this slide is, a small representation of major businesses, Fortune 500 companies that existed, and businesses that existed in 1980, all of them destroyed by this. All of them now, and way more, is on this device. You think of AT&T, largest company in America, destroyed by the internet and cheap long distance. You think if you go back to this, newspapers, magazines, the music business, wrecked by Napster, wrecked by iTunes. Film, Kodak, 100-year-old company, huge company, gone in a decade with digital cameras. Wikipedia has taken over much of the information business, and oddly, no one's getting paid doing it, which is shocking to me. Who's seen a phone booth lately? That whole business is gone. Yellow Pages gone. So many things gone. And what has happened with respect to the internet is very methodically, as download speeds on the internet have increased, that rising water level has essentially swamped and drowned businesses. It first went for information technologies, for news, things of that sort, then communication, email, et cetera, then music, and really it's been essentially file sizes. So as file sizes have increased, the internet has essentially taken over those businesses. And where once there was a significant economic attached to these businesses, tens of thousands of people employed in these businesses, lots of profits. I think I'm getting some interference here. Lots of profits, all really replaced by this internet technology. Let me go on here. So I think this is really interesting. Now the number of internet-connected devices in the world exceed the number of people in the world. And by 2020, there's going to be 50 billion internet-connected devices. So everybody here is going to have 30 of them. Now, this is about my business, television. So this is kind of an interesting slide. This tells a story that I had talked about earlier about how the internet and digital technology has really swamped many of these old businesses. Business has been around for hundreds of years. Then this is a TV business. So I love this, of course, because this is sort of, I've been riding this whole thing. That's basically my career there. And what has happened in the TV business is that digital has actually been a great boon for the television business. Unlike many of these other technologies, digital technology has allowed, other businesses rather, digital technology has allowed the creation of a multitude of channels. If you recall at the beginning, we saw that there was a handful of cable channels and a few broadcast networks. Now there's literally hundreds. And there's new businesses besides, Amazon Prime, Netflix, many other businesses that really could not exist without digital technology. And the underlying business of television hasn't changed. In fact, it's gotten quite a bit more expensive. So if you wonder why your cable bill is now $90 or $200, it's this thing going on right here. So the profitability of television and television programming has really ridden those economics that are coming in on the front end. And by the way, there's another $90 in revenue that comes in from advertisers. And that's really paid for all the great television shows you see. There's something like 50 networks out there now that have a programming budget of over $200 million. So if you look at the business as it existed in the past, it was really, and how this profitability was driven, was there was really only one place to get television. That was through your cable company. Ultimately then became also through your satellite company or a telephone company. But more or less, you had like one way to get television. And that's where a lot of those price increases and that profitability came from. Which brings us really to the first of the three major disruptors that are happening today. And that is the fact that the internet now is capable of delivering video to folks in a very productive and consumer-friendly way. So now you don't need to go potentially through your cable company or your satellite provider in order to see video anymore. And so if you see this page here, these are obviously huge, well-funded companies. All of them have products now that essentially deliver video outside of the traditional delivery modality. So right now you can get video in any number of ways. And additionally, there have been some other developments that have fundamentally changed the television landscape. You now have DVRs where you can skip commercials. You can go and get shows on Hulu or Netflix anytime you want them. You don't have to have television shows given to you in the way that a network wants to give them to you, and the timing that a network wants to give them to you. It's very interesting. In my business, many people sit around the room, they've been in the television business for decades, and they say, why are people watching, people sit down and there's this thing called binge viewing. In other words, and we've probably all done it, where we watch 10 shows in a row of Parks and Recreation or whatever your show is. And it's amazing. I sit in meetings in my company and people sit around saying, how could people be doing this? This is not the natural way to consume television. But what they're not realizing is the network kind of is an unnatural way to consume television. You wouldn't read a book where somebody would say, here's one chapter, and you have to read it between 8 and 9 on a Tuesday. And then we may change that to Thursday, because we like that scheduling better. So you've had these technologies that are digital and internet driven, DVR and these other technologies that are allowing people to take control of their viewership. Now, a lot of that's actually good for the television business and provides more revenue, but a lot of it's really negative to the television business because it's now become apparent, big surprise, people don't want to watch commercials. So the whole commercial business right now, though it's doing quite well, it's quite obvious that over the next 5 years, that entire industry is going to have to be reinvented because it's quite clear that people really aren't that engaged with watching 18 minutes of commercials. You could force people to do it when they had no other choice, but when they have choice, they're not inclined to watch commercials. So this piece is really the first major disruptor, and it's quite freeing, of course, for customers in terms of their enjoyment of the content. So this is an interesting slide because if you actually look, and this is another reason why the TV business is doing so well, is that with the multiplication of devices, you now see people consuming video in many more places than simply on the television set. And what you learn from that, or what you see from that, is that people really like TV. They really like video. They will watch it anywhere. Anywhere you will give them video, they will watch it. And that's driven, in terms of total video consumption in the United States, this number had been flat for decades. And it's just recently been up almost a third. Okay, so what's the second new inflection technology that I mentioned? And this one's really exciting. Displays are going to be everywhere. And what is going to be driving that? It's unfortunate. This was actually video. And what you would have seen, this is from the movie Minority Report. And what you would have seen here is Tom Cruise is working, and he's got right here is a box of cereal. And the box of cereal, the brand image on it is moving. And it's essentially a video presentation. And he's basically eating cereal out of the box the whole time, like the cartoon character on the box is moving. And he can't get it to stop, and he finally throws the box away in the trash to get it to stop. And what is behind that is completely real. And it's called OLED technology. And what this means is it's utilizing essentially inkjet printing technology to print electronic circuits and LED video screens onto anything. You can print it on fabric, you can print it on paper, you can print it on plastic. It's as thin as can be and consumes almost no energy. And it's a beautiful picture. This technology is really now out there. They don't have it to the degree to which they are doing what I'm suggesting, which is being able to print it on fabric and print it on paper, but it will absolutely get there. Samsung just came out with an OLED picture. It looks like essentially a curved piece of plastic, and it's a 60-inch television set. It's really a breathtaking picture, breathtaking technology, and what it will mean eventually is you will see video printed on everything. You will see it on a cereal box. You will buy it as wallpaper. You will put it on your wall, and you will say, I want my wall blue, I want it green, I want it purple, I want it to look like wood, I want it to look like a forest scene or a beach scene. And that technology is going to be everywhere, and it won't be that long before you see that out there. You'll see, I've got some images of what some of that's going to look like. And all of these things, frankly, this is 5 years or so. This is a tablet that guy is bending. This is new printing technology on thin film. You have the curved screens up there. This is really exciting. Video inside of a contact lens. You're going to see it. This technology is here today. This is Google Glass. That's going to be coming out next year. So that's going to fundamentally, of course, change the television business because video will surround you. And there will be dramatic applications of that, not just for getting entertainment content, but also in terms of advertising. You'll just be surrounded by it. It will be everywhere in your life because it will be essentially as cheap to print as newsprint eventually. In fact, I've seen images of technology where they are essentially thinking of the same newsprint technology, those huge machines rolling off newsprint at thousands of miles an hour, and they're thinking about that being video displays. This is a little further out, but is in laboratory work today, and that is 3D without the glasses, holographic displays. This will be real, probably a little longer than 5 years. Okay, third inflection point is a little frightening, but also pretty interesting. So video is going to be everywhere. TV is going to be everywhere. You're going to be inundated with it. But how you interact with that technology is going to fundamentally change. And that is going to be the synthesis of several technologies that exist today. They're actually around us today. They're in other businesses today. They're fully formed. They just haven't really been fully integrated. But all of this is being worked on today. So these items, there's three of them: biometric sensors, artificial intelligence, and facial recognition. So as I said, all of these exist today. Artificial intelligence, if anybody has an iPhone, that's Siri. And Google is putting a massive research effort into the development of artificial intelligence in terms of search and all of their other technologies. Biometric sensors, that's in the Xbox Kinect. In other words, the ability to sense facial expressions and body expressions. And all of these technologies together will mean the following. You will now interact with your television set and, frankly, all the technology in your house like a human being. It's going to talk to you like a human being. It will recognize who you are. It will recognize your facial expressions. It will recognize your body movements. It will converse with you the way a human being would converse. You will walk into your house, and instead of setting the thermostat, you'll just say, "I'm cold." Or it will know when you're on the way home because it's connected to your telephone, and it will turn the lights on for you. When you want to watch TV, I'm sure everyone in this room has had the experience of the great frustration of trying to find something on the guide or find something to watch, or you can't get the TV to work right, and you can't figure out what button to push to get it to work right. All that will disappear. You'll simply say to your TV, "I want to watch TV." And it will ask you, "What do you want to watch?" And it will know who you are. And you can say, "I don't know, what do you think?" And it will give you a list of recommendations. And you can say, "Boy, I don't really like that. I'd rather see something a little lighter." And it will frankly be like talking to a person. And ironically, it will be a person who always does what you want and knows more about you than anybody. Because it will know everything about you. It will know everything you've watched. It will know everything you've purchased. It will know every website you've ever gone to. And that's a little bit of the frightening thing, because you'll also see this technology, I think, go into advertisements. You know, I think this technology, as you're walking around, will know exactly who you are and where you are, and will know everything about you, and will tailor advertising messages to you. It will know everything that you watch. While you are looking at it, it will be looking at you. So, I think on balance, I think this is really going to be wonderful. You know, people love television. This technology does run the risk of disrupting the business model. It costs a lot of money to make television. The one piece of it, unlike what's happening in music and other places, it can't really be automated. You know, good television requires writers, it requires actors, requires a lot of cash. Millions of dollars for every episode of television that goes up there. And there's really no indication that that's going to be automated in any way. So the negative is you may see that this new technology may bring stresses on that and actually reduce the television content. I don't really think so. I think people will always want to watch good television shows. There may be some bad television shows that go away. But for thousands of years, people have been interested in seeing, being engaged with storytelling, and this has really been the golden age of that. The television content that we have today and the film content is really better than it's ever been, and I think that will probably continue. And I think all of this technology, I think, is going to be really wonderful for people and what it'll bring to their lives. And I think probably someone will stand here 30 years from now, and they'll have one of these things here, and they'll say, "Can you believe that we used to watch TV on this?" So that's all I have. You know, I'd love to take some questions. Well, that's the real debate. And, you've had this business of advertising that has developed, which was really based on an assumption that people had no choice and could not take control of their viewership. I don't know what is going to replace that advertising model, but I think it almost certainly will be replaced. If you want to be optimistic about it, advertising has really gone into every information technology that's been created. And there's been no information technology where advertising hasn't been able to find a model. So I think the same thing will happen here. You'll start to see advertising that's more targeted to individuals, going back to that discussion earlier. You are going to get a different advertisement, and everyone in this room will get a different advertisement. So they'll be very specifically directed, and thus they'll have higher value. So I think that's kind of how the market is going to react to it. Yeah. So I'm actually pretty optimistic. And the old model, it isn't like it's going to fall completely off a cliff immediately. So, there'll be transition time.
Super Bowl ads, right? You gotta have those for now.
What's that?
Super Bowl ads, you gotta have those for now.
Well, that's interesting. Right now what's going on in the TV business is sports advertising is like gold because people can't fast forward through it. And it's usually mass reach, big reach. So there's been a really significant difference in valuations of sports advertisement versus other advertisement. I think somebody had
Kind of a comment and question. I think 50 years ago, I was a theater reviewer and there was a woman, an older woman, when I stopped by to read her meter, and she used to tell me about how the people on television were watching her in her room. Knew what she was doing all the time. I had a long discussion with her about how that was not true, and I've come to the conclusion I was probably wrong.
Yes. So I guess 30 years ago that would have been an evidence, 50, it would have been an evidence of psychosis. Now it's going to be, yeah, of course your TV's watching it.
Do you see resistance to all this information that's going to be coming together for individuals? Do you see that being something that people will eventually get concerned about if there's going to be that much about any individual known?
I don't think so. It's a fair question, and maybe, but you haven't seen any indication of that in terms of the internet. So right now, anytime you visit a website, if you're looking for a piece of furniture, instantaneously, every website you visit after that is going to have a display ad that was based on that search that you made. So all that stuff is happening today, and I don't think people, I guess if they're not really feeling intruded upon, I suppose it'll be okay. I don't know though, it's kind of an open question.
Something that's just happening now. People are just sort of becoming aware of all of that. So I don't know where it will go. This is what you described. There's so much known about it.
I think a lot of that is already, you look at the scandals around the NSA eavesdropping program, and I think, some people care about it, but I think most people are treating it a bit with a yawn.
Yeah, I have a question which is kind of, sure. I have a question which is kind of similar to what that gentleman asked. What is the balance between the new technology and the excitement you describe? I can digest what you say about 30 years from now. This will be like what we look at this.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. But on the other side, for the technology you introduced, saying some technology will know more about me than I do, anticipate more about what I want than I do, which I'm not sure if that's what I want. I may want to explore life the way I want to explore about who I am, than some external technology to tell me. So as an industry pioneer and a leader, how would you see the balance between those two?
Well, I think what you're going
Thank
to
you.
see, I think it's you know, it's a fair point, and you hear this, and it does feel kind of alarming, and it feels intrusive. And when you think of the scope of the knowledge, you know, it's really significant. You know, it's really going to know all your likes and dislikes, and yeah, kind of well, it'll probably see you better than you see yourself, right? I think it'll really be how it's presented to the individual, you know, whether it becomes obtrusive or whether it's kind of in the background. I think it will be almost impossible to isolate yourself from it. That's the interesting conundrum. You won't, the one thing you probably won't be able to do is, unless you want to get rid of the television, get rid of the internet, it's going to be really hard to not have that information known of you, known about you.
Over here.
Let me ask you, you talked about these technologies as disrupting and destroying lots of music business and other businesses, the publishing business. On the other hand, it's opened up all kinds of new opportunities for democratizing who produces content, who distributes content. And so people who can publish now and perform music and things can spread. So the way the media, in terms of news media now, there's many more sources of editorializing. And so you could argue that it's also opening up new ways of connecting across the world and democratizing information and creating new opportunities as well, not just in terms of watching us and anticipating our reactions, but also creating new possibilities.
Well, I think that's absolutely accurate. And, you know, let me be clear. Everything I talked about before has been fantastic for the customer, right? I mean, who could live without the internet today? It'd be impossible to even think about that. And you have so many more sources. You have so many people now who, you know, look at Matt Drudge. Who would he have been without the internet? And now he's, you know, frankly, I think he's the #1 news source in the world. So I think that that's been a great thing for the consumer and great thing for the world and great thing for innovation, because the more information people have, the likelier they are to innovate. So I think all that's fantastic. My comment was really in the old, and here's the way I think about it. The old business of information always had a gatekeeper. You know, if you wanted to read about the news, you had the newspaper, or you might have the television, or you have magazines. And there was always kind of a single point of contact. And it frankly, you know, over time, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're moving goods across the world, if you've got, you know, one choke point, that person is going to extract profits from that transmission. And so that was really what was going on, you know, before the internet. You had all these businesses that had some kind of a choke point on information. And that doesn't make it bad. You know, they're obviously doing a service and they were providing great things for people. But it also, it provided this way to make a huge amount of money. And a lot of those businesses also, they were much less efficient, and they took thousands and thousands of people to do it, thousands and thousands of jobs to run the newspaper. I think Matt Drudge has 6 people working for him. So, you know, it's been great, but it's also had you know, and big businesses have been created, but the business is not as big as what they replaced, probably.
Thank you. The question has to do with the idea of understanding you and well, not preempting, but at least thinking in advance of what you might want. Doesn't this lead to the bubble, the echo chamber, where you get back what you've already put in and you don't get any new news because, gee whiz, it already knows who you'd like to listen to, and therefore society fragments more and more between the small sources that people listen to?
Well, you know, this thing is kind of... Yeah, you think I should just do that? Let me try that. I'll just turn this on. Is this on? Okay, great. Much better. We were having this discussion actually at dinner. You've seen the development in the news space where it's really stopped being about the transmission of information, but rather being kind of an echo chamber of a particular ideology or a particular kind of thought. And I think that has the unfortunate aspect of kind of almost closing people's minds to other points of view and polarizing people. So I do think you could say if you've got this ability to watch exactly what you want to watch and go to exactly the websites and get exactly the news source that you want, it probably does have an unfortunate polarizing and kind of enclosing effect on you. And you may just always be looking at the same. I think this is probably true whether you're a liberal or a conservative. If you go to a news website, you probably go to the stories that reinforce and opinions that reinforce your own, as opposed to seeing a more broad-based opinion. So I think it's a fair comment.
Okay, so this is not a personal indictment against you. Totally happy that you're here. It's kind of against the industry, I guess.
Okay, this is a scary question coming all back.
No, it's not scary. I'm a mom, and I'm a grandmom, and I grew up on Father Knows Best and Lucille Ball and all that. My concern is that a lot of the programming that we have on TV is violently obscene, obscenely violent, and then it gets to be violent and obscene. Mm-hmm. And there's just so little that we have to, watch that is good quality and, not so vile and everything. What's your comment on that?
Well, I think it's completely accurate, frankly, but it's completely economically driven. I heard somebody asked a very similar question once of Ted Turner, and I was watching this speech, and I thought his answer was it was glib, but it was kind of interesting. He said, "You know what? Violent programming always does a higher rating." He talked about Discovery Channel. He says Discovery Channel does its best ratings when they do Shark Week, and he said, "You know what? People like violence, and you're going to have to blame the manufacturer." That was his. But I think it's legitimate because you see television content going more and more to the extreme, and they're really trying to do that to drive ratings, capture an audience, and have a hit TV show. If you look at some of the hit TV shows, whether it's Walking Dead or Breaking Bad or Homeland, or any of these shows that are really serious shows, and you wouldn't think of them as, purposely obscene, but you compare them to shows of 1980, they are, well, you're right, they would have been XXX probably at that point in time. I don't know how that ultimately actually changes, unfortunately. Now, with respect to some of these other options, I think there are ways for you to take control of your viewership. There's a lot of family content. If you have, for people who live here, if you have Comcast cable or you have Netflix, there's a huge family-oriented offering on video on demand. So there is a lot of content out there. But when you look at the hit shows that are being made today, I don't see that reversing course, frankly. And it's just the economics of it.
As you look at yourself as a person, and separating yourself from the how do you see these changes affecting your personal? How do you see the personal effect on you over the years? Are you happy about it? Do you think it'll be a more relaxed life that you'll live? Do you think you'll have more time to do other things? In whatever way you want to look at this question, how does it affect you? Skip all the economic advantages to you. Just look at the question.
Mm-hmm. Look, I think personally, I don't know that I'm going to stand up and say that it's going to be a positive. I think it'll be kind of a cacophony around you of, video images, but I think there'll be a lot of positive to it. But then maybe I'm sort of reflecting my age, right? I think it's sort of typical of somebody my age to be kind of crabby about new technology. Maybe, I don't know, do I speak for myself? Maybe. But then on the flip side, I think there's going to be a lot of really great things about it, but you are going to be sort of always connected. You know, you're always going to have, you're going to have like the wealth of human knowledge at your fingertips wherever you are. And I think that's kind of cool. Yeah. You know, I guess now that I hadn't thought about it, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think, yeah, I will. Because I think having that, because I imagine myself, if I rewound myself back to 1980, would I be happier? You know, I don't think so. I think I like these new technologies, though they definitely, you know, you can't disconnect. You know, I can't disconnect from my job. People expect me 24/7 to be available. They send me an email, they expect a response within an hour. It doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. So, you know, so that's a drag, but there's also a lot of positives to it.
I think we have time for one more question.
When you looked at Kodak and the other companies that are bygone, is hardware like Apple and other hardware producers, do you see them morphing because of the cheap video screens, the OLED screens that are going to be cheaper, cheap enough to put on a box? Mm-hmm. Where will the hardware go, and where will the profiting be? Where will the profits be? Or will they be bygone?
I think that to the extent there was a value in an Apple product in terms of the lushness of its video presentation, that's not going to end up being a selling factor. But I gotta believe that has there ever been a time that there hasn't been hot tech? You know, I don't even know what it will be. Maybe it's some brain implant. Who knows what they will come up with. I think they will always be pushing forward in terms of, they and other companies will push forward in terms of technology, and I think it's always, they're going to ride, and others are going to ride that innovation curve. You know what? I can't even say what it is. I don't think anybody in this room knows what, you know, it's going to be. People pay a lot of money for it, though.